Good morning, good afternoon. Today, certainly in Maryland, is a day of reckoning and a day of accounting. In 2018, before I was Attorney General, the Office of the Attorney General launched a grand jury investigation into the Archdiocese of Baltimore. The investigation examined criminal allegations of child sexual abuse by clergy, seminarians, deacons, and other employees of the Archdiocese. The Office of the Attorney General also set out to investigate efforts by the leadership of the Catholic Church to hide and conceal that sexual abuse. Hundreds of thousands of documents dating back to the 1940s were produced by the Archdiocese in response to grand jury subpoenas, including treatment reports, personnel records, transfer reports, policies, and procedures. We created here in this office an email address and a telephone hotline for persons to report information about clergy abuse. More than 300 people contacted our office, and our investigators reached out and interviewed hundreds of survivors and witnesses that led to more survivors and witnesses. Many who came forward had told their story before, and for some, it was the first time. And what we learned is that the incontrovertible history uncovered by this investigation is one of pervasive, pernicious, and persistent abuse by priests and other Archdiocese personnel. It's also a history of repeated cover-up of that abuse by the Catholic Church hierarchy. While every survivor's story is unique, and I had the opportunity to meet with survivors and advocates earlier this morning to hear their pain, their story, for some a sense of relief, for others a continued struggle. While each of those stories is unique, together they reveal themes and behaviors typical of adults who abuse children and those who enable that abuse by concealing it. What was consistent throughout the stories was the absolute authority and power these abusive priests and the church leadership held over survivors, their families, and their communities. The report seeks to document this long and sordid history. Unfortunately, most of the abusers and those who concealed their wrongdoing are dead and no longer subject to prosecution. While stories of this abuse have been documented before, we hope to make public for the first time the enormous scope and scale of the abuse and concealment perpetrated by the Archdiocese of Baltimore. While it may be too late for the survivors to see criminal justice served, we hope that exposing the Archdiocese's transgressions to the fullest extent possible will bring some measure of accountability and perhaps encourage others to come forward. And let me end before taking questions by sincerely and genuinely thanking the survivors for their courage, their candor of sharing their long, arduous, painful, difficult journey and story, often at times when they were considered liars, where the weight given to abusers was greater than the credibility given to the abused. Yet they endured. Upstairs, I did not see child victims. I saw men and women who were survivors and who were telling their story. And I can't tell you how privileged we are in the Office of the Attorney General to walk side by side with them to finally reveal a full accounting of what happened in the Archdiocese of Baltimore. Questions?
Attorney General Brown, is there anything that you had to redact for the judge's orders that you wished you could have kept into this report?
Look, our hope was to reveal everything. That was the undertaking of this investigation, to review hundreds of thousands of documents, interview witnesses and survivors, and be able to share that story to expose those who were involved, the cover-up, the abuse. So our goal certainly is to reveal and disclose more, not less. Having said that, the Circuit Court has weighed and considered arguments, and we are continue to work with the court to reveal more of the report, as you will see when it's released, that there are names that are still redacted.
Mr. Attorney General, you had said in the past that you don't expect to file any future criminal charges. Has that stand changed at all based on the outcome of this report?
Look, we never rule anything out, only because, as I just called or invited others with information to reach out to our office, it's hard to predict what information may come available to us. Where we stand today, we have indicted one person as a result of this investigation. There are limits, regrettably, unfortunately, in the state of Maryland in terms of what the Attorney General can do because of statutes of limitation and the like in our criminal justice system. But certainly, if evidence or information comes to our attention that enables us to further seek justice by prosecution, then we'll do that.
Attorney General, what about the other two dioceses that operate in Maryland? Are you going to investigate those as well?
So we're in an investigation, and as you probably know, we have issued subpoenas, and while our focus has been on completing the arduous, difficult task of the report, the investigative report of the Archdiocese of Baltimore, we did not sit idle when it came or comes to the Archdiocese of Washington, D.C. and the Diocese of Wilmington, Delaware. So those investigations are ongoing.
Attorney General, do you have any plans to investigate other organizations or the public schools?
Right now, our focus is on the Archdiocese, right, of Baltimore, as I mentioned, the District of Columbia and Wilmington, and the Archdiocese includes a number of institutions. It's not only churches, it is schools associated with the Archdiocese. So the institutions associated with the respective archdioceses are the target of our investigations.
Are there any plans for investigating the public schools?
At this point, our focus right now is on the Archdiocese and the Catholic Church.
Can I ask, how do you verify the stories that you were told by the survivors this many years later?
We go through hundreds of thousands of documents. We interview witnesses. We speak to survivors. We look for corroboration. And perhaps something that hasn't been done in the history of this sordid history of the Catholic Church in this country is we credit. We credit their accounts. We credit their stories. We enter into a conversation and dialogue believing what they say. Yes?
Attorney General, did you see that law enforcement at all had any role in the cover-up?
Well, what I will say, and you'll see it in the report, there were past instances years ago where abuse had been brought to the attention of police, prosecutors, at least in one case, a judge, with no meaningful action taken in those cases, and you'll see that is revealed in the report. The difference I think you'll see in this report versus what perhaps you would see on the website of the Archdiocese of Baltimore, we don't just list the abusers and their age and when they died and when they left ministry. This is a full accounting. There are details of repeated, tortuous, terrorizing, depraved abuse. And in a few instances, it was brought to the attention of authorities, and in some of those instances, there was no clear indication that any meaningful action was taken.
Mr. Attorney General, what do you want the victims to take away with the release of this report that they have asked for, fought to get it released? What do you want them to take?
Well, as I mentioned, I just spent maybe 45 minutes to an hour with them. They want to be heard. They want to be heard, and when they read the report, I think for the first time they are going to read a full accounting, accessible to the public, of the stories that many of them have been telling for decades and felt unheard.
Can I ask you to differentiate were like eliminated through rephrasing of the report, and the 37 whose names were redacted, and like, how did you define those categories?
We redacted names when the names were brought to our attention through information that we obtained through the grand jury process. And as you know, the grand jury is secret, so we cannot disclose that without a court order or permission to disclose that. So I should emphasize that because they're redacted today doesn't mean they will always be redacted. What the court will do is will have us notify those individuals and give them an opportunity to look at what is being set forth and alleged, and give them an opportunity, the court will, to object. And of course, we will weigh in on those issues as well. So I anticipate, I can't say today what the outcomes will eventually be, but there may be some redactions that are later disclosed.
The question over here to the right, prior, he's, okay. Go ahead, you can ask while you had a question.
Yeah, can you give us an idea of how many people worked on this final interim report and a little bit of what the process was once the judge said you can release some of it? Can you just walk us through some of the steps?
Sure. Over the last 4 years, where the Office of the Attorney General has been working really relentlessly on this. And we had a lead attorney, Elizabeth Embry, who's now a member of the House of Delegates. We had anywhere from 6 attorneys and 4 investigators at various times working on this matter. Combing through, as I mentioned, hundreds of thousands of documents, hundreds of witnesses, hundreds of survivors. So it was a full investigation where we committed significant resources, and that'll be reflected in the nearly 500 pages that you'll see soon.
Mr. Attorney General, I just wanted to make sure I was understanding you correctly. So the Maryland Office of the Attorney General has now launched an investigation into the Archdiocese of Washington and Diocese of Wilmington.
Now, let's clarify. It's not now as in today, but these investigations were launched well before I came here, and unless I'm wrong, it was at the same time that we launched the investigation of the Archdiocese of Baltimore. Yes.
So are we to expect a similar report sometime in the future during your administration, or?
Well, I want to manage your expectations, so I'll tell you that don't expect anything other than us leaning into an investigation to be as thorough and comprehensive as possible. We have issued subpoenas. We have been looking into this matter, and we will continue to do so.
Based on your investigation, do you believe that the Archdiocese of Baltimore is still covering up abuse today?
I'm going to keep my focus on what is in the report. You will see in the report what we've uncovered, what we've discovered, and I'll leave it at that.
Attorney General, back in February, you said that your office would work expeditiously to get this out. I think that was 5.5 weeks ago. What took so long?
Well, actually, it was more than 5.5 weeks because the initial report went to the court in 4 months ago. And what the survivors expected, what they wanted, was an accurate and full accounting. What the court required was an accurate accounting. And we complied with the requirements of the court, and I believe when you read the report, you'll see that we met the expectations of the survivors.
We've seen this happen in multiple states now with these grand juries. Is there any sort of basis or scope that could create a federal investigation into the Catholic Church writ large?
I'm going to leave that to the Maryland federal delegation to answer that question.
All right, last question.
The Maryland Victims Resource Center has called for there to be indictments against, I think they identified 13 living perpetrators who are going to be identified in the report. Can you explain in a little more detail why you're saying that those indictments are not forthcoming?
Well, I won't speak to those 13, right? Let me just speak generally about the limitations that the law places on me. There are some abusive conduct that happened, let's say, just for example, in the 1980s that at that time was considered a misdemeanor, and the statute of limitations have run, so I could not bring that case, even though I want to bring that case. There may be cases where someone has entered into a plea agreement with a local prosecutor. I cannot, even if I wanted to, bring a case in that situation. So there are real constraints on what we can bring, but I can assure you, as I did the survivors this morning, that but for an insurmountable legal obstacle, we will do everything we can to bring those abusers and those who enabled them to justice. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it.
Thank you.